featuring Bill Gavin and Master Tess Fassian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome to the S Word. I'm Max Scott, joined by the OG Master Tess Fassian as we dive in to another massive day of World Cup action. First up on today's show, the big one. The Three Lions are gearing up for action as we've got the brilliant Jim Proudfoot to preview that huge clash against Panama. Lots of questions need to be answered by Thomas Tuchel's men after that drab draw against Ghana, so we'll dive well into that one. Then we're going to turn our attention to yesterday's results. Cape Verde through to the knockouts. African football expert Ali Howarth will be on the line to review how the African nations got on under the lights and what it means for the rest of their tournament. And sticking with last night's drama, it was the end of the road for Uruguay. South American football expert Felipe Cardenas joins to dissect what next for Marcelo Bielsa, who's given himself a harsh diagnosis after such a dreadful World Cup showing. And then finally, we're going to check in with the Red Devils. Belgium football expert Sacha Tavolieri is going to join us to discuss how Belgium managed to turn things around and top their group after a notoriously slow and notoriously disappointing start to the competition. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Kelshi. Master, my man, how are you, sir?
Bring your dinner.
Doing great. How are you?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. Hey, it's nice to see you. Where are you now, the international man of mystery?
I'm in LA. Okay. I needed a couple days off to stop traveling and watch all these match day 6 games a day. It's been insane. And seeing how this knockout phase is gonna play out. But most of the field, it looks like it's set. A couple spots we still need to figure out where they're gonna be at and where they're gonna go. But it's exciting. Some of these Group 32 matchups already so far are looking really, really interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things, really satisfying things, just to watch the bracket slowly get populated and you start to get an idea about who the runners and riders are and where some of these sides are going to end up, those dark horses potentially sort of making a deeper run into the tournament. But let's talk about last night. Another huge, consequential evening as we sort of finalise this last group games. Let's start with Norway-France, because for me, there are two really difficult groups, but this is one of the groups of death, because you've got Senegal, call them AFCON champions, depends how you interpret the ending of that tournament. You got Senegal, you got France, you got Norway as well. Two top sides. Norway, a little bit of difficult to tell how they were going to get on. They've been fabulous so far. They rested some players. I was speaking to a Norwegian journalist earlier this morning, UK time, who was kind of saying people have been torn. The Norwegian public have been torn. I, for one, think it's a great thing, even though they got spanked 4-1. What do you make of it, Master?
Yeah, it was interesting because they were in a tight spot, because say they would have gone all in this match and had their full starting 11 and came up short against France, then you're talking about 3 off days in between and then having to travel to Dallas for their knockout game against Ivory Coast, and now you're putting yourself in a very difficult position and not putting yourself in the best opportunity to advance into the round of 16. Now, granted, of course, had they won that game against France, they would have faced Sweden, which would have been perhaps a much more comfortable matchup, I'd say, than Ivory Coast, which looks probably a bit more challenging than Sweden does.
It's interesting you say that, though, Master, because this morning, this Norwegian journalist I was speaking to was saying, actually, the Norwegian public, they don't want Sweden because they traditionally play really poorly against them. So actually, this has gone down quite well in terms of the bracket and who they've ended up with.
If that's some sort of Scandinavian thing that I'm not aware of, by all means, if they feel more comfortable with that's fine. What I've seen from these 3 matches, I'd much rather face Sweden than the Ivory Coast. Sweden's center back pairing is atrocious, and someone like Erling Haaland could score a hat trick against Sweden based off of what I've seen defensively from them. And I don't know if that's necessarily will be the case against the Ivory Coast. I think they're a bit more physical, and we've seen in the Premier League how Erling Haaland handles that kind of level of physicality from center backs. And so I think it's going to be a huge challenge for Norway. And if they're feeling comfortable about it, cool, by all means. But I think that they're underestimating the capabilities of Ivory Coast big time, if that's the case. But nevertheless, 5-1? What was the final score? I forgot. 4-1, excuse me, is what it ended. With France playing their strong 11 and Norway playing their backups. And I get it. The sentiment has been France looks amazing. They look dominant. Dembele had a hat trick in 32 minutes, which was
unbelievable.
Great to see. Desiree Doué finally on the board, scoring his first World Cup goal. Great to see. Kylian Mbappe serving as the facilitator, which was fantastic to see.
Who'd have thunk
I thought going in, I know. I thought going into this match that he's probably there was a good sense that there was going to be some rotation from Norway, and I thought he was aiming at a hat trick so he could surpass Lionel Messi and become the all-time goal scorer in the World Cup because he's only 2 behind him. But him serving as a facilitator, it's a good sign moving forward. But let's temper expectations. This was Norway's backups. They did what they had to do. This was a professional 90 minutes from France. Let's temper expectations a bit.
Look, they made 10 changes.
Based off
Norway.
this performance.
10 changes, no Haaland, no Odegaard, fair play. I think it's a really wise decision from Norway to do that. But speaking of France, I mean, you mentioned Ousmane Dembele's sort of 32-minute hat-trick, unbelievable stuff. I was speaking to former Chelsea, Marseille, Nancy striker Tony Cascarino a little bit earlier. He was saying that France remind him of Brazil in the 80s and 90s. You know, incredibly fluid, symmetry moving forward. I still think that, of course, France haven't been tested. I still think that they're there to be got at defensively. But for me, what separates France from the rest of the pack, and I include England in that, is, for example, if France played Ghana last week, they would have broken them down. England weren't able to, and that's an edge that Thomas Tuchel needs to try and find. We'll talk about that with Jim Proudfoot in a moment. But the way that France are moving, the way they're moving in the attack, for me, yes, it's Norway, yes, it's 10 changes, but it breeds confidence, Master, and you've got to be looking at that if you're a French man, French woman, thinking, we're going to win this World Cup.
Yeah, they definitely have enough up top to score against any team, low block, high block, a team that presses high, you name it. Any sort of tactical strategy defensively that you try to do, they have a key to unlock that door. On the flip side, though, as you mentioned, France will go as far as their backline takes them.
Yeah,
because Upamecano got cooked on that goal that was conceded, and then in the second half, Theo Hernandez concedes a penalty in the box on a terrible tackle and a terrible challenge that could have very easily made it 3-2 in the second half. If Erling Haaland is in that match and he's taking that pen, it's 3-2, and this game is open. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't know if I have the confidence in anyone in that back line outside of William Saliba. There's a lot of questions that still exist in terms of what France can do defensively, whether a team that has the right wingers, has the right attackers, has the right tactics, that they are to be had defensively. And the idea is maybe they could outscore you, which, again, is a good theory to have, and I can't really argue against that. But if they're caught in a situation where they don't have enough time to respond to a goal conceded by a Upamecano mistake or a Theo Hernandez mistake or Maignan, who obviously he had to save, so kudos to him, but still question marks on him as well. Is this France back line going to be able to hold it down for this team?
That's the question. That's the question that I know that's in the mind of England fans, and understandably so. Particularly, I think we saw those frailties in the first half of the first game against Senegal, who, by the way, I think have done an incredible job to salvage their World Cup by putting 5 past Iraq yesterday. We know how great they are, or how great they can be. They haven't been clinical enough so far, but they, I think you would say, have scraped into pretty confidently that top 8 of the best third place finishers. Lift off for them, Master. There's a chance England could play them in the next round. I don't want to play them, so I'm hoping things work out and we get someone like DR Congo instead.
Yeah, if it's England-Senegal, I would absolutely be nervous if I'm an English fan, because that is a side in which you don't want to face. They've had their challenges, I'll be honest. The second half against France, I didn't think was the best performance that we've seen from them, and they were a bit inconsistent against Norway. I expected more from them from that performance, but they were able to finally put it together against Iraq, and of course, they should have. Like, this is what is expected of the African champions, especially when you're goal up early. You need to score 2 or 3 goals to make sure you have your best position possible in the third place side. You get a red card from Iraq in the 13th minute. I was getting a little nervous because it took them a minute to find that second goal. That red card came in the 13th minute and they didn't score, and they didn't take a 2-0 lead until the 56th minute. So there was a lot of time there in which they were trying to figure out how to unlock Iraq, and after 3 substitutions that were made, it all came. And basically, once they found that second goal, you knew the floodgates were going to open up. And scoring 5 goals, the most for an African nation in the World Cup, a great performance, but a performance they should do. I think maybe they would expect to have a little bit more from this group stage, truth be told, because they are a talented enough side to have finished better than third place in this group. But now they find themselves in a position where, again, group of 32, potentially against England, could also be against Belgium, depending on what happens today. Everything's still right in front of them. And those are two nations in which, if you're a Senegalese fan, if you're Senegalese descent, if you're one of those players there, you feel like you can beat those two nations.
Without a doubt. I mean, Senegal beat England at the City Ground, at Nottingham Forest, world famous City Ground on the banks of the River Trent in an international friendly, Master. And that was the moment that Thomas Tuchel and Anthony Barry had to really reconsider their philosophical and tactical approach to England that we're still seeing the development of. So we know how threatening they can be. If they are to get England, I don't think that's going to happen, Master, because I think the way that things will work out is that Congo will get a win against Uzbekistan, and then it'll end up being England against Congo. However, threatening either way, lift off for Senegal. They might be a bit disappointed about the way they've come into the tournament. Yes, they've got another chance. One team who won't be, and we'll just touch on this because we're going to go big on this with Ali Howarth, but Cape Verde, mate. I mean, just unbelievable. After that first draw against Spain, I went to the Cape Verdean Association, which is a not-for-profit voluntary charity in London, and spoke to the founder there, who, for me, was just a breath of fresh air and almost single-handedly convinced me that 48 teams in a World Cup is worth it for this one story, to see the sort of transformational impact that this can and will continue to have for football in that part of the world and on those 10 islands. 10 islands, one nation, unbelievable scenes. They're playing against Argentina, so their 3 consecutive games, Master, will have been Uruguay, first ever world champions, Spain, European champions, then Argentina. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the biggest thing for them as well is Cape Verdeans have always wanted to let people know who they are. And the Cape Verdeans I know that I come across are often having to explain themselves, who they are, where is Cape Verde at, where is it on the map, are they African or not, are they part of the continent or not. They no longer have to explain themselves. They don't. And I think that is the biggest win that I think Cape Verdeans across the world are rejoicing in right now. A country of 500,000 people with about 100,000 people, I would say, in the Northeast here in the United States, of the diaspora there. They no longer have to explain themselves, who they are, where they're from, what they stand for. And that is the beautiful part of this World Cup, is having these nations allow their football to represent them and become a microcosm of their identity, and giving people a better understanding of who they are, what they stand for, and what they represent. And with all the odds against them, with all the odds against them, still finding a way to get through, having to face teams like Angola, Cameroon, in the World Cup qualifications, getting to this place. It wasn't an easy road for them through World Cup qualifiers, just as it wasn't an easy road for them through the group stage. And being able to get a point against Spain, getting a point against Uruguay, and sealing the deal by getting a point against Saudi Arabia. It is a tremendous achievement for Cape Verde, and who knows where this journey goes from here, truth be told. This is a pesky team, a team maybe you don't want to face. That would be very, very challenging to try and break down because of how disciplined they are and how much they understand their identity and who they are and what kind of style of football they play. But a tremendous accomplishment, and the joy that Cape Verdeans are feeling right now, proud to be Cape Verdeans, wearing their flags all across this country, celebrating, rejoicing in the fact that they get to represent their country on the biggest stage. That, to me, will be one of the biggest takeaways I have from this summer.
So they don't have to explain themselves anymore, but a man who has got a lot of explaining to do back in Uruguay is Marcelo Bielsa, mate. I mean, he's admitted himself he's left nothing for Uruguayan football after they've unceremoniously been dumped out of the tournament, losing 1-0 against Spain. Another dreadful error from the goalkeeper who was hoiked off at half-time. I mean, this is just an absolute car crash, Master. Are we witnessing in real time the demise of Marcelo Bielsa and how he can fit and function in modern-day football?
I think we are. It's a bit of a disappointment in terms of seeing what's going on with Uruguay. The reports in terms of what's said that, there was some dysfunction happening in the locker room and some misunderstandings in terms of what the team thought tactically they should do compared to what the coaching staff thought as well. Yeah. And I think that was clearly on display. It was a tough watch to see, and this was a very disappointing Uruguayan side that, for the second straight World Cup, not to see them making it out of the knockouts is a huge disappointment.
There's a fine line between genius and insanity, isn't there? And I think that, that maybe it's just the context, right? Maybe it's just, international football. They've not gelled. But you see, like, for example, I loved the moment that Marcelo Bielsa refused to have his picture taken for this sort of, this walkout, which for me is anti-football. It doesn't fit with the sport. I know that it's great for the broadcasters, and I know that a certain audience might like it. I don't like it. He doesn't like it. But rather than bow to that, he refused to engage. I love that. But there's also that side of him that I know from sort of reading about his time at Leeds in particular, that he's a very abrasive character, that he doesn't take fools gladly, and I think that it sounds very much that this hasn't worked with his team. And so, this is clearly going to be the end of his Uruguay career. 75% of managerial changes happen after major tournaments. He's obviously going to be one of them. But disappointing because he's a legend of the game and you want these things to work because he's this sort of fascinating character. But we'll talk more about...
but it's passed him by. I think that's the biggest sign from this tournament is that the game is passed him by. When you just don't have that ability to connect with players, particularly in this Gen Z era with this new generation. A coach's relationship with the players is crucial and fundamental. Again, what is he, 72 years old, I think, right now? He's accomplished a lot in his career, but when the one thing that he is known for is tactically, and you're being questioned tactically by the players in terms of the approach that you're taking in a game where they need a result, I mean, at that point, it's very difficult to come back from that. And I think it'll be hard to see him. I mean, maybe there may be another job for him available, but based off this experience, I don't know why he would want to do that, because this is a trend just not only in the sport, but in sports in general, dealing with a different generation and having to approach, particularly emotionally, connecting with them emotionally in a certain way that I don't think he's capable of doing. Yeah.
I wish the game wasn't necessarily that way. I wish the game was more of a broad church that allowed for characters like Bielsa that really have that spark about them that's more representative of a different era, where managers had authority, where managers' word was, gospel in a sense. I wish that there was more respect within the modern day footballing players community to appreciate that and to understand that. And that's not to absolve Bielsa of any wrongdoing or of any responsibility. Clearly there is. But I think you're right, Master. I think the game is changing, and the way that players expect their managers to interact with them is changing, often for the better, right? But I just think that it's become a little bit binary, and unfortunately, maybe, sadly, the game doesn't have room for someone like Marcelo Bielsa in it at the moment, particularly on the world stage. There are a couple of other big results.
One of the things to say too, I mean, if you're not getting results, it will lead players to question. Like, simply put, if the tactics are not working and they're not leading to 3 points in a new era where they're moving on from Luis Suarez, they're moving on from Cavani, this is supposed to be a new era for Uruguay, and it's not represented in that kind of way, it's understandable for the players to question it as well.
Without a doubt. No, without a doubt. And that, so we'll see what happens. But, big questions for Uruguayan football at its core. A couple of other big results that we'll touch on a little bit later, but we haven't forgotten about Egypt won, Iran won. Incredible achievement, pound for pound, for Iran, with what they've been going through, with how the geopolitics has seeped sadly into the World Cup and the logistics around that. And then Belgium really announcing themselves 5-1 against New Zealand. Yes, they should win that game, but they top the group. They're through to the knockouts. We will get to that with our guests later in the show. You're watching the S Word on talkSPORT, sponsored by Kalshi. Next up, we're getting stuck into the big game. 3 Lions England taking on Panama. What are we going to get from Thomas Tuchel's side?
America! From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
to just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue.
Every day,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
Yeah, welcome back to the S Word with me, Max Scott, alongside Master Tess Fatsian. We're going to get stuck into the big one here. England against Panama. It's the one that we've been waiting for tonight. Which side of Thomas Tuchel's England are we going to see? Are we going to see the attacking fluidity that we saw in that second half against Croatia, which got the nation believing? Or are we going to see the drab, dreary, same old Southgate-inspired draw against Ghana? Who knows? But it's massive, and it's live on talkSPORT tonight.
Marcus Rashford makes it England 4, Croatia 2, and the Three Lions surely now off to a winning start in Dallas.
Hopefully everyone fastened their seatbelts because it was quite a ride.
I'm annoyed at Thomas Tuchel for getting me excited, but for me coming on there and saying we're going to win the World Cup. Yeah, I think we can win the World Cup.
England 0, Ghana 0.
Good result against Panama, and the tournament starts then, as far as I'm concerned.
The beautiful thing of the World Cup is that you get to play against styles of play that you don't normally get to play against, and it'll stand us in good stead going into the rest of the tournament for sure.
They're going to defend deep and make it very difficult for them, I would think, if I was the Panama team and seen what Ghana had done to England.
It doesn't change too much for us in the group stage, so we just look forward to the next one to try and get to 7 points.
Yeah, it's a big one. The whole nation is waiting. The whole nation is watching. The whole nation is going to be listening to talkSPORT's England commentator, Jim Proudfoot, who I'm delighted to say is joining the S Word now. Jim, how you doing, mate?
I'm great, thank you, Max Master. Very good morning to you from New York City. Very excited about this, always excited about England games, but it just seems to be the same situation every couple of years. Off to a winning start, then the second game makes you scratch your head and wonder. It's all about whether they can salvage something in the third game. I don't think that the game against Ghana was a footballing disaster by any stretch of the imagination. They played against a really good, well-organised defensive team. They weren't at their best. I think that it will be a little bit better today.
Jim, talk to us about the lineup that we expect. talkSPORT understands that Bukayo Saka is in line for his first start, something I know that Master will be looking forward to seeing it along with the whole nation, because we know how important and how mercurial he can be for England. But there's also some doubts around Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, and of course Reece James. What do you expect to be the setup for Tuchel? Because he's got an opportunity to play some of the more fringe players in a game which England should be winning.
He has. I hope he doesn't. I think that what has to happen is that he's got to pick his strongest possible side. I mean, there are three potential ways out of this group for England, finishing first, second or third. They know now with Uruguay having lost to Spain last night that they're definitely through to the round of 32. But there's a massive difference between winning this group and coming third. Yeah. And they could yet come third. It doesn't really open up until later in the tournament. Sometimes it does, and you look at it, and I remember this being the case in 2018, you think, yeah, we could really do with finishing second in this group. We let Belgium win the group, and we had a much easier path to the semi-finals. It's not the case this year. You don't want to be playing the Portuguese when perhaps you could be playing the Congolese in the round of 32, and that's the difference, essentially. So I think he's got to go as strong as possible, work themselves into a position of strength, then take players off if the situation allows, and it could end up being a goal difference shootout between England and Ghana. So even say an hour in, if England are winning, they haven't necessarily won the group at that stage, so they've got to be careful. But to your point, Reece James is injured. Certainly we understand for the next couple of games, potentially he might not kick a ball again in this tournament, so that is a massive call. What does he do at right back? And I'm expecting it's going to be Jarell Quansah who will play there, who's played in 61 hours of football for Bayer Leverkusen this season, 91 minutes at right back. But he has played all of his international career, his brief one so far, in that position. I agree with you. Saka rather than Madueke seems a logical choice on the right-hand side, providing Bukayo is 100% fit or as near as makes no difference. What do you do with Declan Rice? If he's got this niggling hamstring problem, it wouldn't surprise me if Kobbie Mainoo comes in. I think Anderson will be okay, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mainoo comes in. And then you've also got the dilemma of what you do at centre-half, whether you bring John Stones back for Ezri Konsa. So, I mean, he's got a few decisions to make. He really has. Came into this tournament thinking it was going to be a pretty settled 11 all the way through, and now you're talking about maybe making 4 changes today.
And trying to figure out which of these players can help break down a low block. I know that was an issue going into this World Cup, and hoping certain players could sort it out and figure it out. But against Ghana, obviously those as many chances as they created and had, just not being able to find the back of the net. You're going to face this again here against Panama, and if you do face the DR Congo in the group of 32, you're probably going to face that again. What can they use? How can they figure this out, this problem that has been plaguing England now for a bit?
Master, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a genius. Let me have a look to see how long England have had this problem breaking down low defences. It turns out it's forever. It's so frustrating watching them at times because you know they have the ability to do it. But I think that this, like many of its predecessors, is an England team that, in a way, is better against better opposition. Now, I know the qualifying group would suggest that that's not the case. 8 wins, all relatively routine, didn't concede a single goal. But it's always niggling there at the back of your mind. How do England break down that sides who are good at playing a low block, which usually is teams ranked around 30, 40, 50 in the world, something like that. I don't think Panama are quite as good at it, and this is really tempting fate. I don't think Panama are quite as good at doing it as Ghana. They will play with a back 5 rather than a back 4. England, I think, can expose an ageing back line with a long, quick ball over the top if they get that opportunity to be able to utilise pace off either side. And that maybe leans to Rashford starting rather than Gordon today. But Panama will sit pretty deep. So are you going to be able to get those opportunities to play it over the top into space? I think the Panama will also play with potentially a little bit of space in behind their wing backs, and if they do that, that's an area that can be exploited. But when you've got 3 centre halves up against Harry Kane, it's important that you get Jude Bellingham, maybe Morgan Rogers later in the game to push forward, make third man runs inside the penalty area. Nico O'Reilly's really good at doing that as well. I think it is going to be a tight game. I don't think this is one that, I mean, England beat Panama 6 in the 2018 World Cup, you remember that. That won't happen today, I'm sure. But 1-0 may well be enough for England. I think 2-0 certainly would be, because that would mean that Ghana would have to beat Croatia 4-0. I can't see that happening at all. But it's another day for patience. And, you know, this is a test that Thomas Tuchel long-term has got to find answers to. Just when you think that maybe he has, it seems that he possibly hasn't again.
Well, look, I'm no tactical expert, certainly, but one thing that I do know for sure is that a way to exploit a low block that we saw against Ghana, we see lots of teams employ against England, is to have specialised fullbacks playing in their correct position. And we've seen Thomas Tuchel sort of flirt with what we saw from Gareth Southgate, is having a right footer at left back, and Jed Spence is an amazing one-on-one defender. You know, I've seen him do it firsthand for Forest and help us get promoted. I think that, you know, he's done incredibly well to re-establish himself at Spurs after his treatment by Antonio Conte. But for me, I don't want to teach anyone to suck eggs here, but England's defence is going to be the reason that they don't win this World Cup if it happens. I still think they can. I think Thomas Tuchel is a world-class, wonderful manager who's establishing a really good culture within the England team. But with Reece James, I'm sorry, we knew, anybody that knows football knew, that he was very unlikely to make it through this tournament. And in Tino Livramento going home and not having Lewis Hall and having these makeshift sort of centre-backs turn right-backs, I think that's going to be really problematic. And when Thomas Tuchel says nobody saw this injury to Reece James coming, well, I'm sorry, Thomas, but actually we did. We knew this was going to happen, and I've got a real problem with the defensive selection, and sadly that being something that I'm laying awake at night, Jim, thinking about. Do you really think that Trevor Chalobah or Jarell Kwanzaa can fill in going deep into a tournament against the likes of Dembele or Mbappe or whoever it might be?
I think there are two things there. I got no problem with the selection of the squad when it was initially made. Sorry. I'll put an asterisk by that. I was very surprised he picked Harry Maguire. Didn't pick Harry Maguire, and he picked Dan Burn. That was the only issue. I had no issue with the balance of it. I think you've got a 26-man squad. You can carry somebody that has a dubious injury record. Whether you can carry 3 of them, I'm not sure, and that's what he's done with Stones, James and Livramento. Tino pulling out, I think, was a good opportunity to pick an orthodox fullback again. I was really surprised he didn't go with Lewis Hall at that stage, and bringing Trevor Jalaba in was a head-scratcher for me. He was asked actually by our England correspondent Faye Carruthers whether, with the benefit of hindsight, he wishes he'd done something differently, and he did talk about maybe taking Reece James off earlier in games to try and protect the workload, but he didn't go as far as saying that he thought he'd made a mistake. The rationale behind it for him is that when he builds from the back in games against better opposition, he likes to do it with a 3. So he'll push O'Reilly forward from the left-hand side. This is in an ideal world if everybody's fit. Pushes O'Reilly forward from the left-hand side. He'll go into midfield. The width will come from his orthodox wingers. And the right back won't push forward as much and will stay in and become a centre-half. And that's why he likes Reece James. That's why he likes O'Reilly, because O'Reilly's really good at doing that for City. James can play that way for Chelsea. And Quansah is the same kind of profile of defender, and he can do that. And indeed, Ezri Konsa could do it as well. But that doesn't help England in a situation like Panama, where you've absolutely correctly, in my opinion, I'm not a tactical expert either, Max, but you've correctly identified the fact that England are going to be able to get the ball out wide readily today against a low block that will play quite narrow. So I've not got too many problems later on in the tournament with the balance of the defence, as long as everyone now stays fit. But today it is a problem, because today's the day when you need more adventurous attacking fullbacks. And Jed Spence hasn't played well, I don't think. He was great in that first 15 minutes against Croatia, but I don't think he excelled against Ghana at all. So I think he might get dropped today. And it's difficult for the manager, because as I just go back to what I said a few moments ago, I don't think anybody saw that we were going to be going into the third game of the group with so many selection dilemmas and uncertainty about what the best team was. And I don't think he thought that he would be either.
Why doesn't he just start Jed Spence at right back because he's right footer, and Nico O'Reilly at left back because he's a left back? It seems so obvious to me, rather than shoehorning in someone who, as you say, across 60-odd hours has played 90 minutes at right back in Jarell Quansah.
Okay, I take your point, but do you think that Spence played well enough against Ghana to justify selection again?
Well,
because that would be the dilemma. I mean, you've seen the video that came out with him shouting at it. You've got to give and go, and I think he was bemused by elements of Jed's performance in that game. So that will be his dilemma. Whether he thinks if he can get Jed Spence absolutely 100% on it, he's fantastic, and this isn't a debate. If he knows he can get the best version of Jed Spence out there, it's not a debate at all. You pick him.
But then the question, Jim, is why did he pick him in the first place if he's not already convinced that he's on it? Like, if that's the issue, that Jed Spence isn't fully focused or isn't fully at it, demonstrating the standards, don't pick him in the first place and pick someone else at right back that we know is a dedicated right back and is on it. And so I kind of think if you've got questions over him, don't pick him. If you don't have questions over him, put him in his preferred position. And now's the perfect time because Reece James isn't fit.
Who's that person he should have taken, Max? Is this a...
Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Are you saying Trent?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't argue with that. I mean, I think that he's worked with Trent, and I personally, as someone who watches England a lot, give him the benefit of the doubt that he's worked with Trent enough and he's made his decision on him for whatever reason. I'm not 100% sure what that reason is. I wasn't at all surprised that Trent didn't make the squad. I think that anybody who watches every England game would see that he was unlikely to pick him. Now, whether that's the right decision or not,
I agree with that. I didn't think it was likely, but I kind of, if you've got this issue with Reece James, I don't want to labour the point, who's really injury prone, then you need to have a sure, replacement. And for me, Jed Spence is that guy, or that he's certainly the guy in the squad. And as you say, he's probably not going to pick him because he's not that sure about him. And that's what raises the questions, I think, amongst the fan base about that squad selection. But
yeah, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that at all, Max. I think you've made your point brilliantly. But it'll be interesting to see what he does today. And my gut feeling is it won't be Spence. I think it'll be Quant.
I don't think it will be either. And I think Nico O'Reilly has to be on the pitch as well. Because the one thing that was very obvious against the Ghana match was England was getting punked. And this was supposed to be a team in which Tuchel talked about identity-wise was supposed to be physical. And I'm seeing, Ghana knocking them off the ball and playing physical. And you're seeing them post-match as well talking about how they knew 45 minutes in that they had them right where they wanted to. So you're going to see the same thing against Panama here. They're going to be a feisty team, even though they have nothing to play for. They are going to try and get under England's skin. Where is the physicality going to come from? Where can England be able to match that intensity that I think is going to come from Panama today?
So it has to come from Anderson and Rice or Mainu alongside him. It has to come from Jude Bellingham. Being in a position that he knows he's going to get bumped and bruised. Harry Kane has always been able to deal with that, but you're absolutely right. This is a shot to nothing for Panama. What's the motivation for them? They've never picked up a point in World Cup history. That's the motivation. It's the best result they've ever had on the world stage. They avoid defeat today. So that's motivation enough. Yeah, they're going home, but if they can go home having taken a point off England, that will be regarded as a success, a qualified success, but that would be regarded as a success. I don't think England, I'm really tempting fate here. I don't think England necessarily have too much to worry about defensively today against this Panamanian team. They are the only side in the world.
You said it against Ghana. I will remind you. Before we left, you said I think Ghana was 60th ranking. You said if they can't beat a FIFA ranked 60th team in the world, then England probably doesn't deserve to win the World Cup. That was your parting shots that you. Yeah. That was your parting. I'm just reminding you. That's all.
Yeah, no, thanks. I was hoping you would remind me of that.
Are you surprised? Go ahead.
I stand by that, and I stand. But I mean, the one thing I would say is that only one of the last 6 World Cup winners have won every game in the group. No, it's not a mortal wound. It is frustrating, and I stand by it. That if you have a very different repertoire of examinations in any World Cup journey.
Yeah.
Ghana, I underestimated Ghana's ability to be as well organised as they were, with the defensive midfielder playing in front of the 2 centre-halves in the way that he did, and Queiroz had engineered them defensively quite brilliantly. It was an off day for England, and I stand by it. If you're going to win the World Cup, then you would expect to put away a side that are ranked in the top 60 in the world. Having failed to do that, I don't think you can fail the same way twice. There will be serious questions asked if England don't beat Panama today, in the context of not having beaten Ghana, then that will start being a real concern.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Jim, real quick to follow up on that. As you talked about the midfield, if Declan Rice is healthy, I've been surprised that Kobbie Mainoo, considering his experience and his creativity in low blocks, hasn't been used. And again, this is not a knock on Elliot Anderson whatsoever, but with Forrest, it's not something obviously that he faces quite often. Is there a scenario where you do play Kobbie Mainoo with Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham, considering their familiarity and their ability to try and unlock low blocks against Panama, considering what we saw against Ghana?
Not for me. If it happens, if it ends up being Anderson and Rice today, that is indicative to me of the fact that Anderson will have a lot going through his head on the basis that he's about to move for £116 million and that he's not fully fit. That's the only thing I think you can read into it. I think Anderson's way ahead of Mainoo, and I absolutely take on board the point that you're making, that they're different types of midfielders in their profile of playing that role, and Mainoo has got more experience of being able to break down low blocks because Forest don't play against sides that do that. But I think Anderson is such an important part of this team now that if he is 100% fit, he'll play.
Yeah. No, I agree, Jim. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to, as always, sync up your commentary to the TV pictures tonight. It's going to be an absolute belter. And we shouldn't underestimate Panama, but also we shouldn't underestimate what we know this England side are capable of. So can't wait to tune in, Jim, and we'll speak to you soon.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words, Max.
Have fun.
It means a lot. And look forward to it, guys. Lovely to speak to you. Take care.
Cheers, Jim. That's brilliant. That is Jim Proudfoot, talkSPORT's England commentator. Fascinating conversation.
That wasn't a shot at you, by the way, with Daly and Anderson, that question. It's a genuine question in terms of the creativity and needing that. I've seen it with Arsenal, having that creative holding midfielder that can create, whether it was Zubimendi or MLS. Sometimes you think with all the firepower that Arsenal has, or even England has, sometimes the holding midfielder, the breaking lines and making that key pass, making the key decision can really unlock a low block and create that 1-0 victory that you're looking for.
Yeah, well, look, with that buttock injury that he's reported to have, we might well see that. You never know, but I think Jim's absolutely bang on. Tuchel won't probably do that because, as we know, he likes his favourites, and I think he's unlikely to experiment if he's fit, but it remains to be seen. Tune into talkSPORT. Obviously, you will find out the starting lineup as soon as we get it. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Calci. Next up, we're going to get into an unbelievable evening for Cape Verde last night.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond.
The S Word
from talkSPORT. show for people who love football in North America. And I mean the proper kind, where you only use your feet.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Yeah, welcome back to the S Word. With myself, Max Scott, alongside Master Tess Fatsian. Now, we've just been building up to the England game, and we can't wait for that.
Come on,
but
England!
The vibes of the tournament have been set, Master, surely by Cape Verde. I mean, just incredible what we're seeing from them and their qualification to the round of 32. It's just top stuff.
It is. It's been amazing. It is a true joy to see the expansion of this World Cup. Though, let's be honest, they would have qualified even in the original format of the World Cup. That's how good they were in African World Cup qualifying. But to see a nation of 500,000 people standing toe-to-toe with giants in Europe and giants in South America and finding a way to get to the knockout stage. And who knows from that point? I know they got to face Argentina, which is a challenge in itself. But, hey, the idea of just being able to play Argentina in the knockout stage for them is a dream worthwhile.
But Master, just imagine.
I know. I know.
The lady from the Cape Verdean Association who I spoke to, Annabella, who was just absolutely wonderful and really captured sort of the feeling of the Cape Verdean diaspora all over the world, and sort of speaking to the point you made a little bit earlier about how they're on the map now. You know, people know who they are, and that's an amazing sort of off the pitch sort of achievement from this incredible team. But she said, without skipping a beat, we're going to win the World Cup. Now, it's a little bit like you, Master, saying that the US are going to win the World Cup. But it's that sort of ambition, and you know, she's ahead of the curve, right? You know, she genuinely believes that this is possible, and I think that speaks to what an amazing story they've been. And I'm delighted to say now that we're joined by African football expert Ali Howarth, who can just really sort of put some meat on the bones of this unbelievable achievement. Ali, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing well, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Talk to us about how on earth Cape Verde have managed to do what they've done and get themselves into a position where they play the first ever world champions in Uruguay, the European champions in Spain, and now Argentina. Just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Cape Verde is kind of, in many ways, I think it's like a social experiment. If you're playing Football Manager and you take the smallest team in the world and you put Pep Guardiola in charge of them, like you take a small team and you make every single decision right from the ground all the way to the top. Everything that Cape Verde is brilliant, you know, right from like the sporting culture, you know, they excel in all the sports they do, not just football, basketball, handball. They're really, really good at those sports as well, through to the federation. Look, this is a federation that has only 7 full-time staff, but they're incredibly professional. Over the last 10, 15 years, they've developed their infrastructure. They've built 2 training centers, which again is really challenging given that there's 9 inhabited islands in Cape Verde. They built a new stadium. They've kind of brought in a technical director to explicitly bring in players from their diaspora, and they've got one of the biggest diasporas proportionate to their own country in the world. And then through to Bubista. Bubista's been fantastic ever since he, you know, took charge back in like 2020 at that time. And they've been building this team ever since. They've been recruiting players from the diaspora. They've been developing players themselves. Everything they've done up to this point has been bang on the money. Like they don't make mistakes. They only get hits.
Yeah, they do. And we've seen this in AFCON. We've seen this in World Cup qualifiers, a nation in which knows their identity, has established this thing perfectly, as you mentioned, from the ground up. What kind of, maybe, we always talk about how Morocco is setting the example in terms of the infrastructure for the African continent, but building a federation from the grassroots, from the ground up in this kind of manner with the resources, the limited resources that Cape Verde have. What kind of other example does this set for African countries of the possibilities, maybe if they don't have the same resources as a Morocco?
100%. They are the perfect example. I'll give you an example. It is the World Cup qualifying is an example. So at the beginning of the World Cup qualifiers, Cape Verde essentially went to FIFA and they said, look, we think we're good enough to qualify for this World Cup. We want to qualify for this World Cup, but we don't, A, have the kind of logistical expertise to get there, and B, we don't have the finances. It is really expensive to do a World Cup qualifying campaign in Africa. Their last away trip of the qualifiers was away in Libya. That set them back about $400,000. For a country the size of Cape Verde, that is not cheap. And bear in mind, they also had an away trip to Mauritius, which is one of the longest away days in world football. You know, like from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. And so essentially, when they approached FIFA said, look, we can give you logistical help. We can give you a little bit of expertise there. And we can also give you access to the FIFA Forward Fund, which is this fund that every country can get access to and can help you with things like travel as well as building infrastructure. And so they got access to that. And that allowed them to, you know, bring a full-time chef. Bear in mind, like in the 2021 AFCON, they were hit by food poisoning in Cameroon, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now they've got their own private chef that travels, you know, days in advance of them. You know, they've turned everything into this professional structure. And that's why when people look at it, they say, how on earth did they not qualify for the 2025 AFCON, but they qualified for the World Cup? That's why, because in the AFCON, they didn't have access to that money. And so when they traveled, they went into some issues, particularly an away match against Botswana, where they flew in the night before, didn't train at all, had to play a huge match the next day and ended up losing. That is how this team has shown, if you're a small nation, there are pathways to getting to the World Cup. There are pathways to being excellent, to being professional. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a huge population.
Yeah, I mean, just an incredible story, incredible example. Can we talk about Ghana, though? Because Ghana haven't got enough praise, certainly in the English press and the English media, for that absolute behemoth defensive performance. They take on Croatia, a really difficult team, ranked 11th in the world. They showed in that first half against England what they're capable of. They can still win this group. And they can still be a thorn in the side of England yet again. How do you see this game playing out? Because it's one of huge consequence in that group.
Well, I want to just quickly be clear that we're talking about Cape Verde being the perfect way to run a federation. Ghana is not. It's been a mess from start to finish. And that's what makes what they've done at the World Cup even more impressive, right? They came into this tournament off the back of 6 losses in a row prior to the pre-tournament draw with Wales. They came into this tournament with only hiring Carlos Queiroz 52 days before the tournament. And look, they were missing Mohamed Salisu, Alexander Djiku, their 2 starting center backs, and Mohamed Kudus, their best player coming into this tournament. Now, it's been brilliant, the turnaround they've done. Now, look, the way they'll approach it against Croatia, I think it'll be very similar to England. You know, they know they're in the strong position. They know Croatia need to come at them, and they've shown that they're very, very good defending in a low block, and they have the tools to hit you on the break. Bear in mind, they should have had a penalty against England. They probably should have won that game. Yes, I know if Harry. Exactly. And yes, I know if Harry Kane scores, you know, that chance, you know, they have to ride their luck. And that's what you have to do in these tournaments. But I think they'll approach the Croatia game in a very, very similar way. Sit deep, play a low block, and hit them on the counter. And you're right, this is not the Croatia team of 2022. This is not the Croatia team of 2018. You know, all Ghana have to do is get a draw. And I think they have it in them to do it.
I think they can win, to be honest with you. I really do. I think they can find a way to, if no disrespect to England, if they could put past 4 against them, I could find a way where Ghanaian side can win 1-0. And we've seen Croatia's issues that they've had trying to score goals, not just in this tournament, but leading up to this tournament as well. I could easily see a Ghana 1-0 victory here and potentially even win the group if depending on the results in England.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's unlikely they'll win the group just because I do think England are really good. And believe me, I'm not someone who wants them to do well, but I do think they're really, really good. And I think they'll probably hammer Panama. But yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's, you know, outside the realms of possibility being Croatia. And I want to put this into context. That is if you said that before the tournament, that would be unthinkable. You know, I'm someone who covers African football. My whole job is doing that. And I did not see this coming from a mile away. You know, you saw how bad Tunisia were. I thought Ghana would be the worst team at this World Cup from an African perspective. Like, the turnaround it's staggering.
I thought it was going to be South Africa, to be honest with you. I thought South Africa and Ghana, the way it was looking, were going to be the 2 worst nations. But I just want to paint big picture-wise. I mean, right now, we've got South Africa's in the tournament finishing second. Morocco's in the tournament finishing second. Ivory Coast is in the tournament finishing second. Egypt's in the tournament finishing second. Cape Verde's second. Senegal's in as a 3rd place. Ghana's in as either 1st or 2nd, depending on how these things play out, but they're already in to the group of 32. That's what 7 nations already. 7 African nations, with 2 potentially also could make it with DR Congo and Algeria. We're talking 9 of the 10 African nations could be in the knockout stage. How ridiculous of a feat would that be? To see 9 African nations. I mean, 7 alone is already crazy. To potential 9 of the 10, that I don't think anyone imagined that.
Yeah, and look, like, there's a reason why those of us on the continent, people who've been watching African football stakeholders, have been saying that the way football is set up has been in a way that just harms Africa, that restricts the potential of this continent. And we've said it time and time again. And look, the 48-team format, absolutely, you know, you can love it or hate it. There's controversies to it. But the one amazing thing it's done is it has given the continent, for the first time, proper access, proper representation. Because you've got to remember, prior to this World Cup, African qualifiers were the most difficult in the world. You had an Egyptian side, which was arguably the greatest ever African team, 3 AFCONs back-to-back, and they still could qualify for the World Cup. because even if you win your group, you have to play another team over a two-legged playoff. And I think for those of us watching, it's not a surprise to see these teams doing this well. Absolutely, it's a surprise to see the results. Like Cape Verde is a great example. I knew they would play this well. I knew they would come out with these brilliant kind of tactical ideas with being resolute. I didn't think they would draw with Spain. I didn't think they would necessarily get these results, but the performances have not been a surprise because we've been saying it for years and years and years. You give this continent a chance. You give these teams a chance, and they will not let you down. Now, when I say that, we're ignoring Tunisia, but the others have all been brilliant. And yeah, like you say, if Algeria get the job done, if the RC get the job done, we could be seeing 9 qualifying, which would it would be sensational.
One of the teams that we most expected to do well, but in the list that Masters just reeled off has done the least well, is Senegal. I mean, I still don't know whether to call them African champions or not. Like, where do you stand on that, first of all, Ali? Let me get my sort of African football lore correct. Are they African champions or not?
They're African champions.
I think you would say they're morally the African champions. You know, they won the game on the pitch, and I've enjoyed that. Like, you know, in all their releases and all of their social media posts and stuff, they always refer to themselves as the African champions. But I'm sure Broncos don't appreciate that or appreciate me saying that. Yeah, look, Senegal have been an interesting one because while they are a brilliant team, they have been let down by a lot of issues off the pitch, a lot of nonsense coming into this tournament. A lot of it not their own fault, a lot of it visa issues. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that yesterday, their team photographer wasn't with them in Canada because he was only given a single entry visa to the US. So if he left the US to go to Canada to cover the game, he wouldn't be let back in. But there's also a lot of issues internally within the federation. And it's a huge shame because they've kind of let themselves down because Pape Thiaw came into this tournament, the head coach, saying, look, if I didn't think Senegal can win this World Cup, I wouldn't be coaching this team. I would walk out the door right now. I would resign. But they've had a really, really tough start. And a lot of that is, you know, selection. I think Kalidou Koulibaly hadn't played any competitive football for 2 months building up to this tournament. And you saw that once they got the selection right against Iraq, yes, they were helped out by that early red card. We saw that this is, you know, a team that can compete with the very best. And I'm really happy for them because I think they needed to remind the world that actually this is a serious team. You know, you've got to remember just, you know, a year ago, this team beat England in Nottingham. Like, this is a team that can compete with the very best and should be competing with the very best.
Without a doubt. Ali Howarth, illuminating as ever. Thank you so much for joining us. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Cheers, guys.
Brilliant stuff. That's Ali Howarth. Just really making sure that we know exactly what we're talking about when we talk about Cape Verde, who have just, in particular, blown people away. Unbelievable scenes that we're seeing. But that's not over. We've got an hour left on the S Word. Next up, we're talking with Felipe Cardenas, all about the absolute car crash that is Uruguay.
From the touchline to the terraces,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
S Word.
Featuring Will Gavin and Master Tess Fassian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word.
From talkSPORT.
Yeah, welcome back to the final hour of the S Word with me, Max Scott, alongside Master Tess Fatsian. First hour's flown by, and now we're getting into something. I'm rubbing my hands at this. I mean, what on earth is going on with Uruguayan football? Marcelo Bielsa's tenure has been an absolute car crash. Master and I, top of the show, debating: is he cooked? Is that it? Is that it for him in first-class elite men's football? Who knows? I don't. But the man that does know is friend of the show, Felipe Cardenas. Felipe, great to have you on the show, mate. How you doing?
What's going on, boys? Happy to be here. It's you call it. It's a car crash. I think it's one that we saw coming, though. You know, from perhaps 100 miles away, because of what you mentioned. It hasn't been a great tenure for Marcelo Bielsa. We know what can happen if things don't go the right way for him, and it's not just from a man management perspective, like from a tactical perspective. I think we could spend a lot of time talking about tactics. It didn't work out either, but the thing that happened with Uruguay is that they didn't hire him to be a man manager. That's the number one thing. And when you do that, when you know that he's not a man manager, when you've hired someone that could potentially have a conflict with a player or players, and you're just hoping it doesn't happen, and you think he has the resume and the pedigree, that's the risk that the Uruguayan Football Federation took with Marcelo Bielsa. Now here we are after a second straight World Cup where they have not gotten out of the group stage. And now their entire football culture, I think, is up for debate.
Yeah, it is. And some questionable decisions in that game against Spain, subbing out the goalkeeper, obviously, which the goal conceded was another howler, if you want to describe it, a terrible stab at it. But then also, more importantly, subbing off Federico Valverde. I did not understand it at all. When you're down a goal, to sub off your captain, your leader, the guy who's the face of Uruguayan football right now, to sub him off with 30 minutes left in the match when you're needing goals, that to me was probably the most puzzling decision out of everything he did in this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Muslera. Fernando Muslera, an iconic goalkeeper in Uruguay, 40 years old, and he was on the outside looking in before this World Cup. He was not part of Bielsa's camp from start to finish, but he's playing very well in Argentina, in the first division of Argentina. He sort of had this, I guess, a bit of a second wind here as a 40-year-old goalkeeper. And Sergio Rochet, the younger goalkeeper that had started in a lot of World Cup qualifiers, just wasn't playing well over the last year or so. And clearly Bielsa felt, well, let's bring back Muslera. He's playing well. He's a leader. He's a World Cup veteran. He can help stabilize that position. And it just blew up in his face. And so, to give credit where credit is due, Bielsa's the guy who's calling the shots. He's coming up with the starting 11. But yesterday, he also said that, when he was asked post-match about Fernando Muslera and taking him out at halftime, he's like, I didn't take him out. He took himself out. And so we can debate whether that is something that...
Do you believe that? Because I saw that too. Do you believe that was the case? Because that is the biggest question right now going on post-match. Did you believe?
I mean, if I had to make if you've got a gun to my head, I'm going to say I do, just because Muslera is later spoke in the mix zone and was completely crestfallen. It didn't look like a player that could have even performed for the next 45 minutes. Now Bielsa also said, I didn't talk to him. There wasn't a conversation. He just took himself out of the game. We know this. Sometimes players go to an assistant coach that they trust and say, get me out, I'm done. And that assistant tells the head coach and they move on. We still don't know if that's the case, but that is what Bielsa said. Regarding Valverde, this is a player we know. We know him in European football. He's very good. He plays for Real Madrid. He's grown into a leadership role and a more active role at one of the biggest clubs in the history of football. But he's a divisive player. He's a polarizing player both in Spain today and for Uruguay. Yes, he is the face of the program, but there have been a lot of, I think, opinions in Uruguay about whether or not he really cares, whether or not he's the player that has really the steel in the stomach that is very, I think you think of Uruguayan players and you think of guys that are going to go out there and play 120 minutes and they're never going to give up. And some of those characteristics have been levied against Federico Valverde, whether he has that or not. Now, Bielsa has told the press that he took out Valverde because he needed more of an attacking presence up top. That's why he put in another center forward. I'm not taking Federico Valverde out of the game. No. And I think that, without getting into too many hypotheticals and assumptions, that is a relationship that I think never was really in a great place. And I don't certainly think it was ever mended. And it's going to be a breakup and an ugly one from here on out.
Yeah, you sort of took the question right from my mouth, and I was going to say, is it not a recipe for disaster to have someone like Marcelo Bielsa, this sort of very old school, hard-edged manager whose word is gospel, and you put him with Federico Valverde, who was fined a lot of money for having a fight with a fellow Real Madrid teammate. I believe it was Tchouaméni, hospitalised him, according to reports. That was all played down by Real Madrid. But you've got this figure who plays for a football team where players rule the roost. We've seen that with the departure of Xabi Alonso at Real Madrid. Ultimately the players didn't like the fact that they had to sit in many meetings. They didn't like the bureaucracy of that. They didn't like the long team talks. And so they've got rid of one of the most promising young managers, and Federico Valverde is the captain of that team. So it seems to me that there's it's probably safe to say that there is a culture clash between the way the sort of old school approach that Marcelo Bielsa represents, and then that of Federico Valverde, who typifies modern footballers and the power that they have.
No, you're spot on. And the Athletic's going to have a big read. I don't want to give everything away, but we'll have a big read on this. And I did speak to a source yesterday that still has a lot of relationships in Uruguay. And you spelled it out. I mean, it's not only a culture clash, but it is the modern footballer, the modern athlete versus the old school, if you can call him a dinosaur, or just an old school coach. And like, when you talk about the modern athlete, like, now they care deeply about their recovery. They do want to be part of sports science. They want to make sure that they are hitting their numbers. And Marcel Bielsa just isn't that type of manager that's going to be looking at their GPS and saying, "Oh, you know what? You've run enough today. Let's take a break." No, instead he does the opposite. He runs more. He runs them more after playing in the heat and humidity of Miami after that draw against Cape Verde. That if you watch that match, it wasn't like Uruguay was laying down and couldn't finish. That was one of the most intense matches I've watched at this World Cup between Uruguay and Cape Verde. And then for those players to go back to the Uruguay camp and probably go through some pretty extraneous fitness trainings, that's where this problem started. And we can argue also, well, the players don't. It's the manager that chooses the players. The players can't cause these mutinies all the time. But clearly they were concerned both for the output of their personal and individual output on the pitch, 48 hours away from playing Spain in an elimination game, versus just having a moment with the manager instead of blowing this up. The players could have gone out there yesterday against Spain and said, "You know what? This is on the coach. It's not on us." But Uruguayans don't do that. That's another piece of this puzzle. They care so much about their national team, about their country, what they're representing, the odds that they are always battling against, that was the dilemma between these players and their manager.
It does go against the identity of the Uruguayan way, as you mentioned, and being reserved to an analytical system that tells you to run a certain amount does contradict. But it's to go back to Federico Valverde, because his whole identity at Real Madrid had been that this guy fights for the badge, gives it everything he has. He's a representation of playing 90 minutes, 120 minutes, whatever it takes, this guy will literally die on the pitch. And for him to not have that same identity in Uruguay, where is this disconnect happening? Is it in this belief of modern medicine and modern science that maybe contrasts with the Uruguayan way that traditionally it just run until until you can't no more? Is where is that disconnect in terms of the idea of Federico Valverde and his perception perhaps in Europe and what it is in Uruguay?
Yeah, I mean, quickly, Marcel Bielsa yesterday, when it was asked about Valverde and about the changes and what happened, he took all the blame. That's what managers do. He was shielding his players, saying, "I was not capable of executing a strategy that would show the power and the class of the Uruguayan footballer. So he did everything possible yesterday to not throw anyone under the bus but himself. But the relationship with Federico Valverde, I just don't think it was ever a good one. And not to get into like the tabloid part of this, but there are images already out of Marcel Bielsa on the team bus yesterday talking on this phone as Federico Valverde gets on the bus. They don't look at each other. They don't address each other. It was just like this cold moment. And obviously the Uruguayan players they went through the mix zone, very few stopped. And so, they're in this like chaos and this crisis right now. But, Valverde has always been, like I said, a player that in Uruguay, they see he started as a jewel. He's become a valid and a bona fide European star at one of the biggest clubs, like I said, in the history of football, playing well for Real Madrid, getting the captain's armband at times. And he has not been able to have the same impact on his national team. And that's the bottom line, whether it was with Diego Alonso at the last World Cup or now Marcel Bielsa at this World Cup and Copa America, etc. It's not like he has just been mailing it in and not playing well, but he has not been able to take his national team to the next level as other stars before him did for the national team. And so this is something that's going to sit with these players for a very long time. I was watching the show offline, watching you guys talk about Cape Verde, and that is really rubbing salt in the wound. Not only does Uruguay not get out of the group, but they are bested by a World Cup debutant. And in Cape Verde, we know about Cape Verde, not to take anything away from them, but Uruguay has they're a former world champion. They are a proud footballing nation, and this is going to be a scar that I don't think they can simply wash away for a very long time.
It's fascinating.
Real quick here, Max, real quick, just to follow up on that, because as you do mention, Felipe, this is going to sit with them for quite some time. 2030, Uruguay will be one of the co-hosting nations in some capacity. And whatever this new format, World Cup potentially that we see, could be expanded to 64 teams. They have 4 years to fix this before, I would assume, they play a home game in front of their home crowd in Uruguay at the World Cup. What needs to change?
Well, first of all, they're going to have to find a manager. The question was addressed at the top of this segment. Like, is Marcel Bielsa done? I think he is. Not because he wants to. I just don't see how. I think he would coach if it were up to him. He would coach until he just is not even breathing anymore. I think that is truly the type of person that he is. I just don't see how, at the elite level, he is going to fit into what modern football is. So I think this could be the end of Marcelo Bielsa. Now Uruguay has to find out, what do we want from now until 2030, where the eyes will be on us from an infrastructure perspective, from our development. Are we bringing in the right players? Do we have the right culture? Have we figured this out? Do we have crisis management people in place to help fix this problem? And so, they're going to be a co-host, as we know. And this is going to be the big question, Master. I don't know who the right coach is. Do they want to say now, we need a Uruguayan? Because again, Marcel Bielsa is Marcel Bielsa, but he's an Argentine. And the Argentines and the Uruguayans do not get along at all. At all. Don't think that they're brothers in harmony. They do not get along at all. And that was another part of the piece of the puzzle that was never really the right fit. So I think they're going to have to go deep into their culture and find someone that understands their players and their football.
Felipe, quick word on Spain, because look, they scored 4 past Saudi Arabia, but they drew against Cape Verde. They've only beaten Uruguay, and we've just been sort of assessing them and diagnosing all of the issues there. Only beaten them 1-0. So do you think that they've really arrived yet? And are you concerned about them heading into the knockout rounds?
I'm not concerned, and as someone that has grown up in the culture of South American football, if you beat Uruguay 1-0 and then you survive, you take it. It's not a difficult game ever to play against the Uruguayans, especially a team that had their back against the wall, were facing elimination. So I think Spain really managed that well. The game gets out of hand at the end, and the Spanish were just trying to get out of that stadium with those 3 points. I would not want to play Spain. I mean, I know we're talking about, we haven't seen the expansive play. We haven't seen enough of Lamine Yamal. But they haven't conceded any goals yet. They are one of the deepest teams at this tournament. Luis de la Fuente continues to remind everyone we have not lost now in 34 games. We are the European champions. They're fine. Like this, that getting out of Guadalajara with a win against Uruguay in the state of play that was presented to them, I thought was a huge result for Spain. And so they're a team that's going to now, I think, relax, know that they're into the knockouts, and start addressing what knockout football is, which is the type of tournament that I think they're very good at.
Yeah, I mean their form's undoubtable, isn't it? I mean, fair play. I just don't know. I don't know what you think, Master. I just think I would have expected more from them in this group. But you're absolutely right. They've not conceded, 34 games unbeaten. You're right. I wouldn't want to play them. I just think we could see more, maybe.
Yeah,
I agree, Master. What do you think?
I would agree as well. I thought maybe the Cape Verde performance left people wanting more, and then obviously this Uruguay match. I do agree with you, though. An Uruguayan side that was desperate, that needed a result in this one. Yeah. That was not going to be an easy match at all. But real quick, I do want to ask about other South American nations real quick. I need to ask you about Ecuador, the amazing moments, beating Germany 2-1, considering what position they were in, finding the results, finding the will, si se puede, all of that. How would you describe how massive that is for Ecuador in that moment? And then hopefully I can get a Colombia question in before we wrap up.
Well, quickly, I feel slightly vindicated because Ecuador, I pointed to them as like, this is the team, this is the best spine at this World Cup. I think Moises Caicedo has been flawless, like absolutely flawless. If you don't notice him, then great. But if you just focus on him, his play has been so good. And the back line with William Pacho is just incredible. But they were on the brink. They were on the way out. And a lot of us had them as dark horses. I was saying before, if they figure out how to score goals, they're going to be difficult. And so I think they're now one of the stories of this World Cup. Their fans are one of the stories of this World Cup, how they took over MetLife and showed that there is a country behind them that believes. I'll be in Mexico City for the round of 32 game. It is like at this point 99% confirmed that it is Mexico versus Ecuador. And I will tell you, the Mexicans went from celebrating a 3-0 result in their group to being like, oh crap, Ecuador? Like that's who we get after going 3-0 and scoring, getting 9 points and dancing our way through the group stage. The one team that doesn't care about altitude, that knows how to play at altitude, that knows how to breathe in the smog of a big city and still play football. So Ecuador, I think, and with everyone looking like pitchforks out for the manager, I feel like it's starting to turn in a way that Ecuador could make some noise.
I absolutely think so too, and I think, as you mentioned, the only nation that plays at a higher altitude than Mexico does is Ecuador. They're very much in their realm, facing Mexico in these kind of conditions and situation. One last one, Colombia, Portugal, big match right now, determining who's going to win this group. I sent you a bunch of videos when I was in Guadalajara. The support that the Colombians are getting. We talked about it before the World Cup, how disappointing it was that they weren't playing more matches in America, but the support they were getting in Mexico was unbelievable. The support I saw yesterday outside the Columbia Hotel in South Florida looked unbelievable as well. We mentioned how Mexico, Canada, the United States has a home field advantage to them, but this Colombian side, I saw it personally against the DR Congo and seeing how that crowd willed them over the line to get them 3 points. This feels like a dangerous team with the support they're getting right now.
No, you're right. I mean, the having 50,000, 60,000 Colombians behind you at every game at a World Cup is going to do something to you from a personality perspective. If you're struggling, Colombia, I don't think have struggled. They've played well. I think you saw them in person. They're a team that can figure things out. They have they have some nice depth and some nice pieces that can help break down a lot of these teams that are playing in a low block at this World Cup. Congo was, I thought, defended really well, had their chances. Trust me, that was a game that could have gone either way. Certainly could have walked out with it could have been a draw as well. Now Colombia facing Portugal with an opportunity to win the group. They are winning the group right now. They just need to draw against Portugal. And you mentioned it. Miami is going to be yellow. That Hard Rock Stadium is going to be yellow. Portugal, I think, is going to have to figure out, like, are we Are we the Portugal that people think we are? Are we contenders? Do we have our GOAT ready to go? Like the expectation for them is also very high, and they haven't played in a game like this. And I don't know the last time Portugal was an away team like this in a moment like this. Now, it's not an elimination match, but it's certainly one that can decide the path for both teams into the knockout. So I think it's, I'm going to pick with my heart, and I think Colombia can get it done, honestly, because I just feel like the team is understands who they are. I'm hoping Cristiano does not have like an iconic moment against Colombia, but you never know. I think it's just, this is the game we all waited for in the group stage, and here it is.
Felipe, has the support changed? Real quick before we go, has the support changed? Because there's a lot of Colombians I was talking to that I posted a bunch of videos and they were all going viral, and the Colombian sentiment was, wow, it's great to see this kind of support for Colombians. Not to say that they don't show up, but just seeing, the instruments, the crowds coming together. Have you felt a sentiment or a difference in terms of maybe the intensity, the passion that you're seeing from this World Cup from Colombians?
I think what may have changed is like a little bit more belief in the manager, because Nestor Lorenzo came in under a lot of pressure. There are a lot of reporters, well-connected reporters, saying he's done after the World Cup, like setting up this just like not a great entrance to the World Cup. And meanwhile, the players are like, we're fully behind him, and he knows who his team is. And so I think there was that coming into the World Cup that we weren't sure. Is this a manager that's a dead man walking? Does he really care? Is he thinking about his next job? What's happening at the Federation? Classic type of melodrama that surrounds a lot of national teams. But the fans, it's what I've said on the show, the fans know that they have a good team. They can play. They have players that are experienced. Danny Munoz, now clearly, in my opinion, probably the best right back in football. And those types of pieces, Luis Diaz, who you think, he's had his moment, but has he had the moment yet? Like, no. And so they feel like that's still coming. They have these players that can beat top sides if they put it all together and they don't make mistakes. And so the belief is there. You saw it in person. The fans are going to be there for Colombia. They just have to continue to play well and get these wins and beat a team, or at least get a result and walk away from this match against Portugal, showing the world that, like, okay, now, watch out for Colombia in the knockouts.
Thanks so much for joining us again, Felipe. As ever, great.
Appreciate it, Felipe.
Take care, guys.
Brilliant stuff. Felipe Cardenas, our South American, just general football expert, giving us all the latest on what's going on in those South American football teams. Coming up next, on the S Word, we are going to get stuck into Belgium. An interesting package in the World Cup. Feel like a golden generation's past finally turned up into knockout stages. What can we expect?
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfacion from talkSPORT.
kickoff to the full-time whistle.
Don't say the S word. Say the F word. Football.
The S word
from talkSPORT.
Yeah, welcome back to the S Word with me, Max Scott, alongside Master Tesfatsi. And now, it was a slow start to the World Cup for Belgium. We know they're not the team that they used to be on paper anyway, but they finally arrived, 5-1 win over New Zealand. And I would really want to get a little bit of an understanding about how far this team can really go. Are the shackles off from that golden generation in a positive way, and can they cause some issues for sides in the round of 32 and beyond if necessary? I'm delighted to say joining us now is Belgian football expert Sacha Tavolieri. Sacha, how you going, mate?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Hope you too. And yes, all the best for tonight, indeed.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I think we're going to need it. The mood in the nation's a little bit down, and I imagine the mood in the Belgian football nation has been pretty down for a long time, because that team on paper, with the likes of Eden Hazard, Kevin De Bruyne in his prime, and so on and so forth, they never really achieved what we thought they were capable of. There were conversations about them being European, maybe even world champions at one point. They've never done it. What's the assessment now after that 5-1 win? I know it's New Zealand, but is there more optimism that, Belgium can go deeper into this tournament?
What is very interesting is that we saw players with experience that score goals. That lack of confidence, we got it now, and that's what we expected to get after that game. Indeed, it's against New Zealand, so the opponent is not very hard. It's weak, we can say it, but fact is that we needed absolutely to get that goals from our leaders to bring on the team, and to help also all the players that are not leaders to come in with that sphere and that energy in terms of performance to make this Belgium great again, as I could say.
Yeah, what has been plaguing Belgium? I mean, again, I thought they were going to run away with this group, and yes, they still won the group, but it became a much more of a bigger struggle than maybe I anticipated and everyone else anticipated.
Yes, it's true. I think we have a big problem in that team, is that we don't have any certitude. And there is a lot of questions also inside the team, and the basis of the questions comes through the defense. Indeed, against Egypt, we saw that we had some problems with the positioning of our right back, Thomas Meunier, and Goy, that young, very promising guy, was able to just make all the job for those very experienced guy that couldn't just have the good positioning for the defense. So that was a bit, I think, the biggest problem. Also, we showed that there was a big space between the defense and the midfield against Egypt. And then the game against Iran was a bit different, because we had so much possibilities, so much occasions to make goals and to perform, but we couldn't do it because we just were afraid of scoring goals. I think it's all about mentality. It's all about the mindset we got. And fact is that what you saw in this match against New Zealand is that they learned about the game against Iran when they had just a little possibility to shoot on just a bit behind the line of the penalty line. They did it. They tried their chance. And they pretty good did it good. So that was the most problem. Against Iran, we wanted to go and just to enter in the goal with 10 guys. I don't understand why, but we wanted to be beautiful. At a certain moment, you just have to go back to the DNA of football in Belgium. And what's it? Just counter-attack, go fighting, and play with the qualities of your players, which are efficiency, which are speedness, which are also, of course, the explosivity and the impact of certain players. And that's a bit what we saw against New Zealand. So that was the reason why I'm really positive right now for the next round.
Talk to me about Kevin De Bruyne, because we know, I mean, it's the most obvious thing in every nation. The biggest player receives the biggest criticism, whether unfair or fair. What's the mood like towards Kevin De Bruyne, who's been the best player, the focal point in this team that, let's be honest, has consistently underperformed?
Yes, but that's totally true. And fact is that we have to make a big difference. And I think in England, that's usually also the problem, because we have the image of Kevin De Bruyne performing in Manchester City, so very good into the system. But as I said, Kevin De Bruyne is a system player. That wants to say that he really needs to be in the best conditions to be free in the collective with partners that just give him some solutions to play with him. And what we saw in the last games of Kevin De Bruyne is that, first of all, he didn't have any space to make his job and to play his football. And also he had to make 35 meters with the ball, just handling the ball on the pitch, during the game, to try to make something. And that's absolutely not conceivable. You know, when you have possibilities to make the difference with Kevin De Bruyne, you have to put him in the best position. And what's the best position for Kevin De Bruyne? The offensive half space. That's sure. You know, and we had very big problems about that because we couldn't just positioning Kevin De Bruyne in his best position on the field. And that's what we saw a little bit during the games against New Zealand. But once again, we were prepared of a sort of kick and rush game with a lot of space. So Kevin De Bruyne was more confident, and we saw him very good because he had these possibilities and this space. What would it be if he needed to go and again face one or two opponents just directly against him in face-to-face on the field with a prepared strategy against Kevin De Bruyne of the opponents? That could be very, very difficult.
It could be happening in the group of 32. I mean, yes, Belgium took care of business, and they do have a very comfortable travel schedule. They're based in Seattle. They'll play their group of 32 match in Seattle. They make it to the round of 16. They'll once again play in Seattle, and their quarterfinal match would be in Los Angeles. However, as you talk about trying to find a team, whether can create that space or not, could be facing potentially South Korea or Senegal, two opposite ends of the spectrum, where you'd expect that space to exist with South Korea, maybe not so much with Senegal. What will it take? I'm guessing you're preferring for South Korea here, considering what you just shared. Like a South Korea matchup probably works in your favor and your advantage in terms of getting Kevin De Bruyne the space he's looking for.
Yes, sure, absolutely. If we have some players and also some mindset of game, like what we saw in the games of South Korea, we will have a very, very, first of all, beautiful game, because it will be just all about attack. And then we will have an open game with open spaces to go in. And of course, we will need to defend well, but we will have also possibilities to bring our biggest player on the next to the goal in order to finish. And that's, I think, the most important thing about that game. If we play against Senegal, it will be another game, and I think it will be impact, it will be intensity, and yeah, it will be also very frustrating for some players that couldn't show what they have to show. But once again, if you want to be at the highest level possible in the World Cup and make good results, you need to play against every team that you're facing to. So it's up to the chance. I think just need to I have to wait that Congo is not winning against Uzbekistan, and Algeria is losing against Austria, and then we will wait and we will see. If we face South Korea, I think it would be the best, because after this you will have also a very open game if we win indeed against the States. So the United States of America are playing like a Premier League team. So once again, that will be the type of football that can suit to our team. But yeah, I'm very afraid of Senegal. You can hear.
Well, you just said it there.
As I'm sure Max is.
It's the Master Sacha derby potentially in the round of 16. Master, you must be, you'd be confident going into that game. Surely both of you would feel like this is a winnable game.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because Belgium just beat us in a friendly earlier, and they just absolutely destroyed us 2 months ago. But this feels like a different USA side. And in terms of this bracket, I'm sure Belgium has to look at it in this kind of way, and so does the US. There's a favorable pathway here, depending on what happens in a round of 16, to make it to the quarterfinals and make it to LA. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm really impressed, by the way, by this US team, because I really see that they love to play football, and also they learn how to play good football, good European football. That team has absolutely changed, and it's absolutely not the same team that we faces in friendly in March. That's obvious. But yes, indeed, it's also a bit like the South Korea, a team that is giving space and that is not very secure on the defensive departments at some time. So that will help, of course, Belgium, and that could be also a good souvenir for the Belgium, because you remember, indeed, the biggest match that we did in the World Cup. It was in 2014 with Tim Howarth on the goals, and that was pretty impressive and pretty historical, with the game finishing at the end of the night, and with the big suspense. So it would be, that's sure, a very great spectacle.
I want to correct you real quick, though. I know you said we're playing European football. We're playing American football, baby. We're playing American. This is red, white, and blue football, all right? We're playing aggressive football like we do in this country. So, but I am really happy with the style of play we're playing right now.
That's great. That's great to see. And also, I'm happy to see once again how football is going to evolve in the America. I was just some days ago in Los Angeles, and yeah, it's growing step by step, the passion in America for football, and it's getting time, but it will be good. It will be good at the end.
Sacha, thanks so much for joining us, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck. I'm hoping that both you boys get through your round of 32 so we can see the sort of rematch.
I'll see you in Seattle.
See you, baby.
We'll run it back. We'll run it back. Belgium, USA, once again in the World Cup. Come on.
Let's go for it.
Brilliant. That's Belgian football expert Sacha, friend of the show. I can't wait for that, Master. I want to see sort of like gloves are off, like turn the chair around, lean over the front, get around this table, build up to that one.
Yeah, we got to beat Bosnia and Herzegovina first. I don't want to overlook them. Let's take it step by step.
Oh, Master, that sort of false humility doesn't suit you, mate. Be brash. It's Bosnia,
mate. Listen. We're in the knockouts now. All bets are off. Let's take care of it. Let's make sure we handle what's in front of us, and then we can focus on the round 16 after that.
Okay. That's not going to be a concern, because you're right. I mean, it's interesting hearing Sacha talk about, like, you know, I don't think it's just Belgium, this theme of sort of leaky defences, but going forward playing some really good stuff. I think that's a theme in this World Cup, and it's refreshing because it makes for a better spectacle, makes more entertaining games.
It does, absolutely. And whether it's the style of play, some people pointing at potentially the ball having a difference as well. Some of these indoor stadiums have been creating some incredible. Houston itself. There's been an insane amount of goals that have been scored in Houston Stadium alone with the controlled conditions. So I think all these factors are coming into creating one incredible spectacle with a lot of goals.
Yeah, absolutely. We're loving it. So coming up next, Master and I are going to preview the games tonight. We'll get stuck into England, but some of the other consequential games, particularly how this might affect Scotland as well. And as that sort of final knockout bracket forms, who we think is going to go all the way in this World Cup. You're watching The S Word with talkSPORT, sponsored by Kalshi.
Bringing all the biggest football debates
stateside.
The S Word
from talkSPORT. presents
The S Word.
Get your full-on football fix from across the football galaxy.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Yeah, hello, welcome back to the final section of the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi, with myself, Max Scott, and Master Tess Fatsi. And Master, we're going to get stuck into some of the games that are coming tonight. There's a fine set of group games that we're looking forward to. But I wanted to get your take on one of the off-the-pitch stories, which has continued to be a talking point as we see geopolitics, politics seeping, sadly, into the World Cup. We know it's inevitable, but the treatment of the Iranian team and the way that they've been sort of shoehorned in and out of the US and their preparations have been tampered with. Following Iran's 1-1 draw with Egypt, the captain of the Iranian football side has essentially come out, Mehdi Taremi, and said, look, it's a disaster World Cup. He says it's a disaster. FIFA have tried to solve every problem here, but unfortunately they've not been able to. Mr. Infantino came into our changing room after the first game. I'm sure you've seen that footage, and said this is just the beginning, but it's our group stage finishes and we don't have our logistics people here. They do not have a visa. Now, Gianni Infantino likes to play politics. We've seen him sucking up to Donald Trump, that sycophantic behaviour, which I think has sort of been nauseating for real football fans all over the world. What do you make of the absolute car crash that has been the treatment of the Iranian football team?
Taremi has every right to feel that way, because what Iran has had to go through to this point has absolutely been a competitive disadvantage for Iran. And when the margins are so small as they are right now for these third place sides that are fighting, Iran getting 3 draws in their 3 matches that they've had, like, this is a side that literally had to change their home base, their camp base in the World Cup from Tucson, Arizona to Tijuana, Mexico, because of these visa issues. This is the same side that has been interrogated through customs as they've entered the country and have had to literally leave the country back to Mexico immediately after the match, unable to get the treatment, the conditioning, or even just being able to rest after the match in the same way that every other nation gets that privilege to do so. Iran has had to hop on the bus, get back on the bus as soon as they're finished their match, and head straight to the airport to head back to Tijuana. It's been incredibly unfair what they've had to go through, and now, unfortunately, they had the goal disallowed that would have allowed them to qualify into the knockout stage. So they're sitting around today waiting to see what these results unfold. Currently, they're sitting at sixth place out of the top 8 third place sides with a 0 goal differential. They've scored 3 goals, also conceded 3. They're going to be watching to see what Croatia does against Ghana. They're going to be watching to see what Algeria does against Austria. And they're going to be watching to see what DR Congo does as well against Uzbekistan. And if those 3 results don't break in their favor, they're going to be eliminated and not make it out to the knockout stage for the first time in their country's history. It's an unfortunate situation for them. It's a shame that it would come down to this situation when the margins are so small, and the simple fact that maybe the treatment situations, maybe having to do the long travels from Tijuana to Seattle plays a difference in terms of their ability to perform. All of these factors have to come into play where it's very clear that Iran has had to face situations that other nations have not had to face. And again, this is a country that we've seen can make the most of unfortunate situations throughout their history. And if they do make it into this World Cup, we've talked about the amazing stories of Ecuador making it. We've talked about the amazing stories of Cape Verde making it. If Iran somehow finds its way in the knockouts for the first time in their country's history, this story trumps them all, considering everything they had to go through just to play on the pitch.
Yeah, I'd agree, against the odds. And it kind of speaks to the very heart of sport, which is about playing on a level playing field, right? And about having the same opportunities and the same treatment, and the fact that they've been sort of ferried out of the country as quickly as possible, I think is a great crying shame on FIFA's behalf, that in their tournament, essentially US, political discourse has been able to dictate this. And that's certainly what it seems to me, because their treatment has been downright unfair. And we don't know what these Iranian players are going through, because currently they live in a nation under a regime which is disgracefully oppressive. And we've already seen one of their players essentially not be allowed to get picked because he's spoken out. He plays in Qatar, spoken out against the regime. So we don't know what these players believe, and what we can't do is cast aspersions on them. We saw them leave, I thought a really fitting note to the fans in LA. They left that on the flip chart because, of course, LA is home to the largest Iranian diaspora in the world. And so I just think that it's another thing that just stinks of FIFA. There are so many things in this World Cup that are beautiful, that are entertaining, that are fun. You know, whether it's the Norwegian fans rowing, whether it's the Tartan Army taking over Boston, whatever, right? But there's so many things like pricing and like this, which I think is a real shame, because Iran, you would think, deserve on merit to get through. And in the game of fine margins in elite sport, which you know about, Master, these things do count. If you can't warm down, if you can't stay the night and relax and rest and do what all of the other top elite players are doing, that's going to have an impact.
Yeah, a simple fact, just being able to cold tub, hot tub after a match, or getting the proper icing treatment, or just, going to the physio to, assess whatever knocks or whatever the case may be that you need to after the match. These situations, unfortunately, from the sounds of it, have not been afforded to them in the same way as other people. And even the simple fact of them just playing it, like you mentioned in Los Angeles, I mean, even their fan base has been split, whether to support this nation or not, support the players or not. And I mean, all they want to do is play at the World Cup. Every person has dreamed of this. We've seen amazing stories like the goalkeeper in terms of what he had to go through just to make it to play professionally, and let alone have one of the most impressive performances in this group stage. Like, these are the amazing stories we should be highlighting. And unfortunately for them, it hasn't been, the rosy, dark horse or even just underdog story that we're accustomed to. But if they do make it out, I think we have to highlight it. We have to shine it. And we have to celebrate that against all the odds, this team was able to find a way to make it to the knockout. So if you're looking for something to root for, this could be potentially something to keep your eye on today with all these matchups going on.
Without a doubt. Well said, mate. Now, talking about the matches going on today, let's get into it, because we had a great conversation with Jim Proudfoot. Really interesting to see sort of his take on sort of, the tactical issues and the squad selection. We didn't really get a chance to get into it ourselves. Master, what do you make? I mean, there are so many ways I can go down this. What do you make of the decision to pick Reece James, knowing that his hamstring's essentially made of glass? And this is sad for him, because he, on his day, on his game, playing at his top level, is one of the best players in that position in the world. But I said before, if England get to a World Cup final, Reece James won't be there because he will be injured. It's got to the third game, and he may not be able to play any more at all. And for me, Thomas Tuchel, don't take the public for fools and tell people no one saw this coming. We all saw it coming, mate. And so I love Thomas Tuchel. I love what he represents. I love the swagger. I love the calmness. I love the aggression as well. But there are a couple of things that are just really getting me when we shouldn't be talking about this.
I agree. I do think this was inevitable, unfortunately. As we've seen it time and time again with Reece James and his hamstring, even though he did have a good string of matches and he was fit for a period, it's inevitable at some point. Unfortunately, he's going to have issues with his hamstring.
I thought he looked sluggish in the first two games, Master. He didn't light it up. He had a couple of decent moments, but I think he looks like a man that can't play more than once a week.
I can't disagree with you on that, but it's not going to be Reece James is the reason why they can't beat Panama, or Reece James isn't the sole reason why they drew against Ghana. Yes, this will play an impact in the knockouts with whoever they face, but they should have enough to beat Panama. They should. I need to see an England side that can break down a low block.
Yeah,
that's point blank. Period. For all the sentiment that I've seen from English pundits and media saying, the losses, everyone can't win every single match. This and this. We'll face teams that don't face low blocks in the knockout stage. Well, I mean, there's a chance you face either DR Congo or Senegal. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's not going to be an open match either. So you have to find the answers today against Panama on how to beat a low block. Because if you can't do it against Ghana and you can't do it against Panama, then there's no hope for you trying to figure that out in the group of 32 personally.
Do you think they will, Master?
I think they'll have enough to get by. I don't think this will be a 5-1 victory like Belgium did against New Zealand. I think this Panama side, I've mentioned time and time again, this will be a pesky side. They will be here to play spoilers. Like Denzel Washington, they try and leave here with something, Max. They are trying to leave this World Cup with something. And I promise you, if you go back to Panama, knowing that you got a draw or got a result against England, that might as well have been good enough. That might be even better or equivalent to making it to the knockouts. That is something you can go back to your country with a lot of pride and joy. And the Panamanians that exist in New York will be celebrating the streets as if they just won the World Cup. So that is what England is up against, is that level of desperation and determination to get something from this World Cup. How will England respond? How will they respond with the physicality? How will they respond with the tenacity? I have seen it from the United States. When we have underestimated Panama in CONCACAF competitions, they've punked us, they bullied us, they kicked us in the teeth, and that is something that England has to find a way to avoid. And I don't know who it is that's going to be able to find the answers, but there is enough talent, clearly, on this roster and within whatever starting 11 Thomas Tuchel picks, with Reece James or not, to find those answers. But if you can't, I'm sorry. Like, there's just no hope for this England side.
Despite the genuine and I think legitimate concerns that myself and other England fans have about the selection that Thomas, his squad selection and the issues defensively, I do at the same time believe that Thomas Tuchel is an upgrade on Gareth Southgate, that Thomas Tuchel knows how to win major tournaments, that Thomas Tuchel can elicit a grittiness and a mettle and a resilience and a confidence to go out and attack. I do think that is still possible, mate. And so, despite the concerns I've got, I do still think that it's possible England can reach another level. It might take a little bit of time, but I think it's possible. Do you share my sentiment?
I think they'll get a result here. I don't know how far they'll go. I really don't. Because what I saw against Ghana, I think they'll face it again in the group of 32 or in the round of 16 against Mexico or Ecuador. And all this talk about the quarterfinals and all that, getting through those first two knockout matches, I think will be a huge, huge challenge for England. And if they're able to figure it out on this day against Panama, that's great. But can they do it consistently facing that 3 or 4 straight matches? That remains to be seen, and I'm a bit doubtful of that, to be honest with you.
No, fair enough.
What do you think? What do you got final score, though?
I'm going to say 3-0. I'm going to say 3-0.
3-0?
Yeah, I'm going to say 3-0. You've scored more than 3 in a game. If you can do it, then we can, mate.
Oh, we also won our group already. 3-0. I got a 1 or 2-0 situation here.
It's not beyond the realms of possibility. It's not beyond the realms.
Yeah, I'll go 1-0. I'll go 1-0.
Okay.
I'm being a bit cautious because I have yet to see it. Until I see it, I'll believe it.
Okay. No, fair enough. I'll take that. And you've got every reason to be sort of cautious about it, particularly with that performance against Ghana. Master, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks so much. Good to see you back. And I'll be following you and your travels all over the Americas. It's been great.
Appreciate it, man.
Brilliant. That's all from us today on the S Word, sponsored by Calcia. It's been an absolute belter. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, reviewing a huge game for England. What we're going to get from Thomas Tuchel, well, we will see.
The Daily Deep Dive into the world of football.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.